Hello, this is Jonathan with a podcast preview of what I'm doing in homeopathy. And really, I felt a need to kind of communicate some of the reasons why I'm teaching the way I'm teaching. And I want to make a presentation about the problem of homeopathy, the problem with homeopathy, the problems of homeopathy. And in order to sort of open the door to clarifying solutions to those problems. In homeopathy, we're always trying to find a remedy that's a reliable and useful remedy. And in this image, we've got a road sign with one direction for aconite and one direction for belladonna. And this is often the situation we're in as homeopaths or as beginners, as moms, as dads, as gardeners, as pet owners, as doctors, trying to choose the right remedy from remedies that seem very similar. So in all, when we practice this lovely medicine, the information for finding a remedy is very easily found. It's very simple. There are indications for the different diseases, but choosing the right remedy is not so easy. And in my opinion, the methods for teaching homeopathy have been completely backwards. And a lot of us practice that way. I know I did in the beginning. I was absolutely doing it all wrong. I trained as a homeopath in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And honestly, it was a crapshoot of different ideas and knowledge that wasn't complete. And I was taught well. I had good teachers. I had new methodologies to use. But really, in truth, I was a little lost. And that's why this image of a path is so important to me. So mainly, if we're getting it wrong, the likelihood for success in our prescribing is reduced. The patient doesn't improve, and they'll end up choosing another therapy or practitioner. We lose the patient, and the patient loses the possibility of a potentially curative medicine. So that to me is a very, very important reason to talk about these problems. So in this idea, first we need to understand how we get lost. So there are several kind of prime reasons, and I'll list them out. So first and foremost is choosing a remedy on the disease name, i.e. fever in children, i.e. toothache, i.e. allergies, i.e. menstrual cramps, etc. We go from there and then try to differentiate what is supposedly a group of remedies that could be useful for that. And yeah, we will get success. We will have success, but not reliable success. And nowadays, there are many, many more remedies than there used to be. And so choosing a remedy that works becomes a harder task. And in my methodology of teaching, it's not about learning remedies. It's about learning a method to choose remedies. Another mistake we make is to choose a remedy on the emotional state. And to me, I always describe it like prescribing on using Bach flower remedies, but using homeopathic remedies in their place. Yes, we'll get good results, but not curative ones. So a good example of that is, seeing a person in grief. They lost a partner, they lost their boyfriend, they lost their job. We might think of grief remedies, but that's just one part of their reaction. And quite likely, that's a normal way of reacting. So what's, more interesting there is what's changed in their state of reaction. What's stuck in their state of reaction. Another important mistake homeopaths make is choosing a remedy on a singular and peculiar symptom. So what that means is something that's very unique to a remedy. Let me think of something that's very unique to a remedy. Right-sidedness. This might be a very common symptom, but we might choose it as a reliable symptom because we know remedies with right-sided conditions. Another thing is back to the grief example. Very famous remedy for grief is Ignatia or Natrum muriaticum. Both very good grief remedies, but totally different in the way they express their grief. Overall, the wrong remedy eats at your confidence in yourself and in homeopathy. So I want to talk about the remedies on the signpost, aconite and belladonna, because they're really good examples of how we can get so confused about which to choose. And this is only two remedies. Imagine having four or five that have similar symptoms to the condition you're trying to teach. How do you choose? So these are both very common childhood fever remedies. They both treat fevers, be it from a cold or from sunstroke or some other flu. They might have coughs, they might have runny nose, they might have many, many symptoms of coughs and colds, basically. So, but primarily it's in their fever state that these are the most applicable. And yet, their fevers are quite different. Both treat the common fevers that we see in everybody, especially children. So, for example, aconite's fever is characterized by fright, by sudden onset, by restlessness and burning symptoms. They could look extremely fearful, but that might also be a sort of consequence of the fright that might have triggered it. Might have been an upset, might have been a shock, might have been a hurt. But it came on suddenly. It could be from change of weather. It could be from, carrying a bug in their system for a day or two, and then suddenly it manifests as a very, very intense flu. It could be vomiting. There could be many, many symptoms of that. But just to go, the general characteristics: fright, sudden onset, restlessness in their behavior, and some burning symptoms. Now, belladonna is very similar. Pains or fever comes and goes suddenly. It often has a time, 3 p.m. or 3 a.m., that it might hit, but it also has a lot of redness. There may be warmth and redness, heat of the hands, flushing of the face. They could be thirsty. They're also fearful, just like aconite. But here they might have imaginary fears. We get into the deluded state of belladonna fever. So very interesting to think about these two remedies having similar application for conditions that come about as a result of an infection, flu, bacteria, shocks and upsets. The patient is fearful. So how do we distinguish between them? So that's an important question. And what do we need to do? Do we have to learn all the descriptions of hundreds of different remedies? In my mind, there surely has to be a better way. The founders of homeopathy from 200 plus years ago, they had no difficulties choosing a remedy. Those characteristics that they could rely on to manifest in a patient with an illness were very clear to them. They didn't only prescribe on the disease itself. They had laid out a methodology far different from what is being taught today. And some may argue that it was different then. People were different. But, fever is fever. What's become the problem in our modern world is that of growth, and in homeopathy too. From the early days of homeopathy, where there were just hundreds of remedies, there are now literally 500,000. I'm sorry, 5,000. That's a bit of an exaggeration. I'm prone to do that. So 5,000 remedies in the new books. It's extraordinary. I could go into more detail, but I won't, because the idea being not to give you tons of information, but to really show you that there is a question of how to do this properly, and there is an answer. So, just to sum up, being on the wrong path is, you know, really hard to recognize because we say things like, oh, it won't matter, homeopathy is safe. And that's not necessarily true. We can give the wrong remedy and exacerbate a state of illness. It can also waste time and leave the person ill for longer, getting worse. Choosing the wrong remedy also creates alienation for the patient, for their family, and especially for other healthcare providers. And again, it eats at your confidence in yourself and homeopathy. So I just want to talk a little about what would be the right path. The right path would be knowing what's useful in terms of the language of the homeopath that's being described by the patient, both verbally and in their symptoms. That means knowing what symptoms of theirs are reliable. And going back to belladonna and aconite, maybe fever isn't a reliable symptom. Maybe fear is not a reliable symptom because it covers both those remedies. So which one would you choose? So you have to dig a little more to find more information from the patient in the language of homeopathic symptomology. And it's not that hard. It's almost as easy as a checklist. And then further than that, we need to know what to expect from a well-chosen remedy. You go to a health store or pharmacy that sells homeopathic remedies, and you read the label says, take 5 pills 3 times a day. Well, that for how long and to what aim? Is more better? Quite honestly, one dose usually tells you if you're on the right path with a remedy. So I hope this has opened your eyes to some of the issues around homeopathy, and that you should know that there are teachings that are available and practices that are available that will guide you. And it doesn't mean rote learning of remedies. It doesn't mean complex philosophy. Homeopathy is very simple. I mean, look at it like this. If you had a headache and you took a Tylenol, paracetamol, for head pain, would you take it again if the head pain was gone? And it's that logic, same logic with homeopathy. If the remedy's right and it helps you, when would you take it again? When you need it. And so that idea of taking remedies continuously is so wrong. It's not the drug in the medicine, it's the reaction that the patient has. And the patient has a strong reaction because the remedy is chosen to match the state of reaction in their illness. It can produce that same state of reaction. Yes, in some instances, it can match even and produce the same illness. But more often than not, it's the reaction to illness that the remedy matches. And why is that important? Because we want to support a healthier state of reaction to the illness the patient has. Anyway, I'm going on more than I expected. So I want you to know that this series, the problem with homeopathy, is really more about the solution, and that I hope to illuminate some of the common ideas around homeopathy that are useful and not, and help you make better choices in your prescribing. And that it is as simple as knowing what to read rather than reading everything. Okay,